wander down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stars up there, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Directing in a sign too.
I went up there.
I
I was
love that
paying
too.
attention to the date, or like the location here and here and here and here, and I was so just autopiloting myself. So at 2:15, and I was like, oops.
Would you all want me to introduce you, or you want to just get it?
It's up to you, yeah.
Yeah,
Please, yeah.
Since you're here.
Yeah, since you're here.
Why not? We'll give folks like another minute or two.
Okay.
I hope everybody is helping themselves if they're interested to the delicious snacks. We have extra good snacks for this.
Thank you to the CPE grant, right?
Yes, thank you to the CPE grant. Thank you to CPE. They're making us work, but they're feeding us. Yeah, we had more folks registered, so I'll give it.
Yeah, sure.
A little bit longer.
And I earned my kids' makeup, so I'm not living anywhere. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here on a Tuesday, the week before spring break, and when midterms are due on Friday.
And with the start of advising as well.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of people take advising today.
Everyone I advise sent me an email afterwards saying, I have conflicts, I have overlaps. It's like, oh yeah, 4-day classes, inevitable. But it was 100%, everybody I saw, half a dozen people, they all had conflicts. Like, well, this is gonna be a long advising.
Yeah. Yeah. There will be adjustments.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We felt like we needed to change one more thing. I think it'll be good once we adjust. Okay, folks, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you. Welcome to another Essential Skills professional development session, or your first one if you've not been before. I think everybody has been to at least one before. I have with me Dom Ashby, Associate Professor of English, and Karina Powell, Assistant Professor of Sociology. Both of them are involved with the graduate profile team. We actually have a really big team that Sarah Wenzel has worked very hard to put together. And the reason that we have that is because we want to support everybody through the changes that are happening in the fall. We want to make sure that everybody feels prepared, feels like this is doable, and feels ready when we start in the fall, and is excited to teach their gen ed courses, just as they always have been. So Dom and Karina are going to talk to you a little bit about transparency in teaching and learning, and I will hand it over to them.
Thank you. Thank you all, everyone, for coming here. For those in the room, I would say normally I would be standing up during one of these, but we need to be close to the microphone to record for the video. So, of course, some of you may be familiar with TILT already. We had a really strong initiative promoting TILT several years ago here at EKU. Its ties to metacognition, I think, are really important and make it a really helpful approach for connecting with our students and supporting them. And today, what we'll be focusing on will be this connection of TILT to the essential skills, because not only is TILT a great way to be teaching in general, this is also a really smart way to be making clear to students what our expectations are and how a class is going to be supporting them in terms of their acquisition of these various essential skills. So this workshop will establish the foundations of transparency in teaching and learning, or TILT, with a focus on approaches for teaching the 10 essential skills. Transparent teaching and learning practices make learning processes explicit and clear, while offering opportunities to foster students' metacognition, their confidence, and sense of belonging in courses to promote student success. In this session, we will briefly review the concept of transparent teaching and learning. Then we will establish the foundations of transparency in learning in learning and teaching approach. Based on this session, you'll be able to describe the core components of the TILT framework, and you'll see repeated through this session these items of purpose, task, and criteria. These are really key. You can also, you'll find later, there are other headers that you might include as well, but these three are the really essential ones. You'll be able to identify how transparent instruction improves student engagement, equitable learning, and learning outcomes. We'll analyze and identify revisions to one of your own assignments using the TILT framework. And you'll be able to share strategies for implementing transparency in your own teaching context. So ideally, being able to take ideas from today and share it with other faculty in your departments and units. Also, just for some context, this is day one of 2 days of sessions. So today we'll be focusing largely on first giving the background, then focusing in on beginning with assignment revision. Tomorrow we'll be bringing in more of a focus on assessment. So because TILT needs to apply both at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the process. So revising our outcomes just a little bit to use the TILT language. Here we might think with that idea of purpose, task, and criteria. Purpose, we want to understand how transparently designed assignments can offer these equitable opportunities for students. The task will be to review a summary of previous research findings and apply the approach to one of your assignments. And then criteria, you'll leave with these strategies for applying transparency in assignment design and beyond. So before we get started, though, we'd like to take a few minutes for you at the tables or folks following along later at home to do this as well, just to jot down on a notebook or to discuss with some around you. First, reflect on a time when your students misunderstood an assignment or struggled with meeting expectations. And as you're doing that, also consider what information, tool, or approach might have helped them to succeed if they had had it in that context. So we'll give you a few minutes to reflect on that, and then I'll ask for some volunteers to share an experience. Hey, well, my timer went off, so I'm going to ask for some volunteers now, and I will slowly come around with the computer here too, so we can catch this for folks watching it later. So can I get a couple of volunteers to talk about a moment of maybe student misunderstanding?
Uh, Chuck Elliott, I teach in the wildlife program in biology. The introductory course in the major with the principles course, one of the things we want them to do is we have where they need to develop an initial resume that they'll add to and build on as they take the upper division courses and get more hands-on experience. I just did it here not too long ago. And I've learned over time, but if you want to sit there and say misunderstood, nobody read the directions. That's it. That's it. You know, I've learned over time to go over it on class, send the assignment, an email, send all the examples and attachments, you know, take a look at this website, take a look at this website. And what I get constantly turned in and they have the rubric and I get it. And it's like, there are sections entirely missing. And when I have the individual appointments, they're like, oh, where was that? And it was like, did you read your email? Oh, you know, they just don't follow the instructions. So I'm not sure what else to do about that. But I just now go over it in class and make them individually talk back to me like, do you know what goes in there? But as far as a class assignment, it's constantly just falling on deaf ears because nobody follows the instructions.
Okay. Yeah. So not getting the assignment, but it sounds like you've come up with a strategy then for helping more students to focus in on what are those expectations.
It's almost like having my kids where I would sit down with them and say, repeat after me. Yeah, you know, almost to that extent. But yeah, that's the one that's just most recent on my mind.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It was a real waste of time to take class time to do it.
Yeah. Can I get another volunteer?
Bethany Warner, Advising and Career Services. So I think one of the things we kind of discussed is that sometimes, very similarly, you can give them a lot of the instructions, but you have to sort of be prepared for them to fail at it. And then maybe the adjustment that you make is they're able to resubmit this assignment when they figure out that they didn't read any of the instructions and they didn't do all the things we went over in class. You know, this is, especially when we're talking with early learners, we were kind of framing it more on first year students, kind of being able to pivot a little bit because you can give them all the strategies sometimes. And if they're not engaging in the strategies you give them, like, then what do you do? If they do fail it, can we give them the opportunity to do it again? Because sometimes they learn more from the failure or the mistake than they do from us supplementing things, like helping them understand what the expectation is and that we can pivot.
Yeah. No, I like that because then it's like part of the purpose. You're giving them that opportunity to succeed the first time, but
Right.
with the anticipation that they may very well
Right.
not, and then having that backup to come back again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can imagine that as being something that maybe in terms of the framework might be fitting in more in terms of like that's maybe something that is more, that strategy would be more instructor facing, right? So that your focus on what are the goals and the outcomes would be there from the beginning, right? But then recognizing that students themselves need some training sometimes in decoding that and having that backup plan that's in there. Great. Other volunteers on this question? Or related to it, also just thinking about were there any occasions too where if students had had more access to an additional tool or something that it may have made improve their opportunities for success? I mean, it sounds like in both of these examples, you all have been laying out already, like the links to the relevant websites. You've been laying out the criteria on there. So it does sound like you are sharing those tools. But have there been times where maybe, I mean, and I'm just sort of thinking of from my own experience here, more with upper division courses, that sometimes I might anticipate that, oh, this is a 300 level course. My students should know how to access the library databases. So when I'm assigning a research requirement, a source requirement, I used to not be telling them information about that because I thought, well, they're bringing that with them. But what I've come to learn is that the preparation of our students can be uneven there. Um, so I've now fallen into the pattern of on the assignment and then also on the day, either the day of or the day after I've assigned it, to give some time over for reintroducing students to those databases as one tool to make sure that all of my students have that, as opposed to just some of it. And that can be where that equity component can come in, right? That sometimes some of the students will be there and will have the information that they need, but I need to remind myself, well, not all of my students have fared that same. So here is a tool that I use automatically, that some of my students use automatically, but then others don't. So let me explicitly call that out for them as a tool that can lead to success. Has anybody else had a similar, like that kind of an experience where something may have been missing that you could add, that could be added in? And it's okay if nothing immediately comes to mind. Oh, here's a hand. Great, thank you. Let me come to you.
So similarly, something that just keeps coming to my mind that I've had to do multiple times is explain the why. Why, what is the purpose? How is this directly connected to you? How is it going to help you? And so I guess it goes back to that transparency of just being very explicit with this is why, this is the purpose, this is the benefit. And I find that when that connection becomes very explicit, that it's kind of like, oh, okay, we get it. And they care more, they're more involved, they have more agency with it. So I find that when they seem to struggle, if I take a step back for them and explain the why and the purpose, that's a effective tool.
Yeah, great. And tying that to Bethany's experience, it sounds like there, the purpose was stated or the why was stated on the assignment. But that even then, that sometimes a student, students maybe might not believe it, right? And so then they might be needing that experience of failure to say, oh, wait, you mean it when you're putting this why in on there. Yeah, great. Thank you all. So here's another sort of set of questions. We won't take as much time here, but maybe rather than giving the time to first stop, maybe I'll just ask for a few hands to think about and respond to these a little off the cuff. So any of these three questions of when you're picturing a fully engaged student, right? So not the students who we've heard, right, in these examples where the students are disengaged in various ways, right? They're not engaging with the assignment. They are maybe not engaging with the class. But what's that opposite? What is that goal that we have as teachers? So when we're imagining a fully engaged student in our classroom, what is it that they are doing? And this kind of comes back to that earlier example that I gave of the engaged student or the prepared student being ones who know to use the library databases, for just as one example. But what are they doing? And then conversely, what gets in the way of students showing up, of being engaged? What are some barriers there? And also, what are some choices maybe that you've made in your teaching that is connected here to that purpose. And I think this comes back really, really strongly to Bethany's example, right? Like you've anticipated this, right? You've seen the disengaged barrier and you've already made these intentional changes that are in here. But to hear, like to just hear a little bit from you all about what would the positive, what would the engaged student look like, and then maybe what might be preventing other students or the disengaged students from rising to that same level of participation or engagement. Again, I'll try to come around if we can get a few thoughts on this one. Because maybe another way would be, what is it that what are we hoping to see from our students if we're seeing them as engaged?
Well, again, it might be just different here because our program is basically people are going to work for state or federal wildlife agency. So typically they're going to get the degree and go employment. And I found that I've made better headway with some of them, especially some that are just spacing out, is that last one specific choice. Is I found that as each class, as I go through that material, I will repeatedly say, why do you need to know this for the job? What will the employer expect you to know? You need to know how to do this because this is what they're going to want you to know. And sometimes people perk up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but making it more relevant, I think, along the way that, you know, you need to know this for the job that you're going to get as you leave here. The employer expects this.
Right. Well, and I think that really ties in with thinking about authentic assessment, right? That you're showing, here's what makes this an authentic experience. And I think it also ties in really well with our goal here with this workshop series of thinking about those essential skills too, because that ties in so well with that. Any other? I think that's a really great example.
I feel like whenever the students are hitting those like higher levels of blooms, but especially the create, it's just like getting them the fuel to like continue igniting their fire. Because I've had students that have come to me and they're like, oh, with this marketing plan, I've got a business that I'm trying to start. So if I were to do this, and then some of them will come to me and be like, oh, Dr. Blair, like if I go do this for extra credit, will I get a few extra points? But it's like, it's them saying like, I want to go to this networking event. I want to go meet these industry professionals. I want to develop my authentic professional brand, which is one of our key learning outcomes in college business. Like with students coming to me and asking for like, I want to do these extra activities, or now I'm doing these things outside the classroom. How do I like continue to like ignite that and get their interest, but then also connect the pieces of like these things that you're learning in class can like get you to like your future career or your entrepreneurial opportunity or whatever it is that interests you. But then even better, how can I connect some of the other things in the curriculum and be like, if you're pulling together your finance class and your marketing class and your supply chain, you need to bring all these things together to reach like that end goal. So it's almost seeing like their future self, right? And how can they like pay that forward now? And then that leads to where their goals are for their business or idea or where they want to be in the future.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, right? And I mean, in ways that might be able to, so thinking about ways that you could do something like that to work that into an assignment, into the prompt, or even into part of their task, right? To be able to reflect on and project those experiences, right? Because I think some students, right, your standout students are going to come in and do that.
Yes.
Already. And then how can we nudge more of our students along in order to do that? And I also thought really valuable here was students making connections from your class to also other classes and their goals and their other experiences, right? So thinking about not only what are the learning outcomes for our class, but also what are students' experiences and their incomes that they are bringing in with them. Because if they can feel that kind of engaged and authentic connection, it validates them within the class as well. And I think that can motivate learning in really productive ways.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of opportunities with essential education where you're able to say, I'm pulling this from math and statistics, I'm pulling this from my English class, I'm pulling this from history, and seeing how all that comes together and adds value.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's connect this here to thinking about some of these methods of transparent teaching. And so these are some examples that are they're pulling from the larger research about transparent teaching and how what this can look like. So transparent teaching will help students understand the how and the why, which are things we've been hearing from you all. How and why they're learning course content. And this, I think you can probably, because several of you have already been to several of these essential skills workshops, right? This is one of the key things, is we want students to know what the skills are and how they will help with their professional lives. How will it help with them professionally? How will it help in their other classes? But giving them not just the big picture things, right? I mean, we can put on our course syllabus, here's the learning outcome, here's the skills that this course is going to address. But what we also need along with that is the granularity. Here is how this assignment, here is how this particular activity also ties into it. And that's where these idea of the particular way, right, or the very specific way that something ties in becomes important. Think about these small and achievable teaching strategies that have the big impact. These can be little, the little tweak, the realization that, oh, for these students, I need to work in some time because they're not at that point yet where they're just reading the assignment. So let's take the extra time and go through. That can take time away from other important content, right, that's being covered, but at the same time, it also makes sure that for this assignment, that they are getting that depth, right? And ideally, this can be a small change that happens maybe in some assignments, but then they're starting to learn more, pick up those better studenting skills, right? Hopefully going forward. I like the idea, another important idea of encouraging students through growth mindset, learning how to learn. I feel like Bethany, your example is, again, coming back to this. I keep coming back, but I think that, okay. But I feel like that's a good learning to learn moment, right? That sometimes failure too can be part of learning to learn. It's like, oh, wait, there are stakes. And I do need to pay attention to these headers and to the rubric and to all of these other things. It's not just here to fill up the page. There's a reason behind it. And some students come in and they know that, and other students, they don't have it yet. So we have to adjust along with that. But also helping students to recognize those points because part of metacognition can also be the recognition of knowing what we don't know. And our students can struggle with that as well, especially early on, right? They might be overconfident about something, might not be asking questions. So helping them to develop that self-monitoring to know, oh, wait, when do I need to go back to the syllabus? When do I need to email my professor? When do I need to check my email, right? Even because I don't necessarily know what's happening. And then this notion of empowering students, right? So back to Jim's point about like they've got these other goals that they're bringing in, other knowledges from their other classes. Reinforce this idea that we're respecting them as learners, right? That they're coming in, even as first-year students, they're coming in with valuable experiences, but then as they get further and further along, right? We know they've taken these other classes within our department. They're starting to accumulate this material and to give them the opportunities to use that and make connections between their classes. They're all things that can add this sort of sense of empowerment to students. Now, so far, we've been focusing a lot on just what is TILT? What does this approach look like? We're going to be shifting now with the presentation to align more closely with talking about the essential skills and how TILT can help make the essential skills very visible and understandable for students. Again, I think really key here is we want to be explicitly stating to students which essential skill or skills are being addressed in a particular assignment. Not just we know it's there, right? And I think this is one of the key things about tilt is that often in our teaching, there are things that to us as experts in the field and who have been teaching in the field and working in the field for a very long time, there are these elements that become second nature to us. They become common sense to us, and they are not for our students, not yet, right? Because we want to get them to the point where they are, but they're new and we're guiding them through this mentoring. And so a part of that, part of helping them to make that common sense for them is the awareness of terms, the awareness of the outcomes that we have. And so using that language very explicitly, even though it can feel funny, right? Why are to keep using that terminology? Well, it's important because the repetition can help students to internalize it and help them to better note and see the how it's tying in, how it's important. Separate from tilt research, but I think related, is research that's on the transfer of learning, right? And transfer of learning, an important idea there is that students are more likely to be able to transfer something they've done in one class into a different situation if they're able to metacognitively reflect on it. And a part of that, I think, ties down to, do they know the terms? Can they name it? Can they name the thing? If they can use the language, they can better abstract it and think about, okay, how would this move from my English 102 class to my Business 300 class? Right, recognizing and being able to navigate through those moves. So that's where having that clear language can be really good, and the importance of identifying skills. Having this transparency of identifying, again, purpose, task, and criteria, including in there language about the skill. That part of our goal is developing knowledge of the skill. The part of the task is practicing the skills in these ways. And then the criteria, whether you're using a rubric or some other form, right, for assessment, and for making criteria clear. Again, mentioning the skill language that we're wanting them to achieve. Now, a goal here is maybe 1 or 2 essential skills per assignment or activity. Don't throw all 10 at them. Even if there might be little traces of more than those that you are seeing as the instructor, for the purposes of what we want to focus on to make it transparent for students, 1 or 2. It helps them to get more depth. It makes sure that it's not becoming overwhelming for them. Also, for you all in the process of redesign, working with 1 or 2 skills per assignment is a much more manageable thing as well. And we do want to think about making sure that this is something that is manageable for you and for your colleagues in your departments and in your units as well. So Karina is gonna step in and work now on talking some more about the specifics of applying tilt to assignment redesign.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Don, for providing such comprehensive introduction to tilts. The second part of the session will be a little bit more applied, but first I would like to break down and see why this approaches really help the students. Explaining to students why they have to do a particular activity, like such a homework, project, or exams, and you already all conveyed that information, really puts this into kind of a framework where they realize the importance, like a long-term importance of gaining the skills. And most students, sometimes they don't necessarily even have an idea that you actually work so hard putting together all this class activities and the other assessment and assignments for this course to increase students' learning. And conveying that message and making it transparent actually helps a lot. So it's kind of getting the students on your side, like asking them to help also you, to increase the learning outcomes. The students can be unmotivated, as we can always see, if the assignments aren't necessarily clearly, and transparently conveyed. And sometimes they tend to do the minimum work that is necessary, which is why we are here to explain them the importance of the in-depth understanding of these assignments. Many assignments designed do not encourage students to learn how to learn, right? So like this is a thing that we already kind of talked about in this session. So talking about metacognition, right? Understanding why am I learning this, which is valuable in teaching and learning all the 10 essential skills, which I will not be talking about today. We already talked about them a lot. Yes, so moving on. When you're in order to design your assignment, obviously you need to think about the three things: the purpose, the task, and the criteria. Today we'll be talking about focusing on the two first, the purpose and the task, and we'll talk about the criteria tomorrow in the tomorrow session, so please welcome. So first, when explaining the purpose of the assignment, think about what does it teach, right? And why it is relevant. Those are the questions to bear in mind when you're starting to think about how should I convey this purpose, right? So they know not just the fact that they're doing it for the grade, but actually that they're doing it to master a certain skill or skills, right? When describing a task, make sure that there are details provided, right? What I found it also really helpful is providing them an annotation, an example of what the good work would look like. And that was great. That actually, like, I made some statistical analysis after that, and it looks like I would have like a less emails after that, like after posting an actual example of what the good assignment would look like, because they not only see it, like they read it what you want from them, but they actually see what what you expect them to look like, and they like that. They always appreciate me providing them an example. So if possible, that would be great. Explaining the criteria for grading, well, this is just sheer transparency of how you will be grading, what kind of rubric would they be, encouraging the self-assessment and peer assessment obviously helps, right? And encouraging reflection and planning for the future growth mindset. That is something also to bear in mind when we explain them the criteria for the grading. So let's start with the purpose when explaining the purpose, you need to share the rationale for the assignment with students and explain the learning gains that students should expect. Consider, like, in 5 years after the completion of the assignment, right? What kind of knowledge student retain from doing this assignment? Is it something that will, like, still, like, stay with that student from that particular assignment, right? What skills should students be able to perform because they practice them while doing this assignment, right? And again, this is very broadly applied for any kind of discipline. It doesn't necessarily have to be specifically for a certain, certain profession, right, or a certain major, but it's across a discipline. The skills that we're teaching them that could be applicable in professional world, in the academic world. And finally, how will these skills and knowledge still be essential in the student's life 5 years later from now, for example? Yeah, those are the things to bear in mind when you're creating the purpose. So we would like you to look at these example here. This is the purpose description, and we would like to work in groups to identify the rationale for the assignment with students and explain the learning gains that students should expect based on this particular piece here. Should I tell him that we also provided the link or not yet? Yeah, like you also
People read this
Yeah,
clearly
is it
enough?
is it clear?
Okay.
Okay, so you should have received today's session's email, a message with resources that is listed, and the first link, excuse me, the first link will take you to the document there, and the purpose should be, excuse me, on page 1. So again, look at the example and work with your table partners to identify the rationale for the assignment with students and try to like explain the learning gains that students should expect. So great. Okay, should be okay.
Yeah.
That's one in the future too, because you got that notion that you might. And probably just through the discussions, they get your different perspective, as though what might be a problem, say that that's. We don't have a little problem here. Fancies and like flipping the times on. Do like writing, I guess on properly and things like that, and like passive income, those ones are very important. They don't take this without. Paying or like the house they buy and stuff, so then you're sure that you put off.
You just help me become an influencer.
Yeah. I feel like a lot, there's a number of educators that have really prominent like TikToks or like YouTube pages. And then the one that follow NKU, he's in economics, but he kind of like breaks out into this, so you know, so the deals with these on that. It takes a long time. First, gotta come up with something new every day. Having to stay, right?
I think it's good to go. Right.
It's gonna be a long time.
Well, thank you so much for working in teams. Anybody would like to share any insights from the tables? Anybody?
Now, based on what you had on there earlier, I think the basis I need. So I mean, I think it. Following through in terms of the essential skill and everything you said should be laid out there, I think it does, unless I'm missing the boat.
Yeah, this is the revised version of the assignment. So yeah, this is the
remember that,
perfect version of the purpose. Yes.
If
All
they
right.
read it.
Yeah. Anybody else? I should have given you more time, right? Okay. It's really long. Yeah.
My little first year hat on, because this is not fun.
Mhm.
Would be a class potentially taken by freshmen and sophomores, depending on their math readiness level. There's a lot on here. I would think they might have some trouble reading it. I think as it goes down, it's much more clear on what they want to do step by step. But, it's a lot.
So yeah, just to make sure, so for the folks who were hearing, or listening to the recording, a concern about the length, right, of the purpose and thinking about for first year students. So on the slide, we've got sort of the intro to the purpose, right? And then the purpose gets more developed as we go further in.
Yes, this is the one that actually fit the screen. So that's the one we're using. But I think it was fine for the in-class activity like that. But obviously, it's a little bit more lengthy, as well as the next thing that we'll be working on, the task, right? So The task is a productive steps for students to follow, right? So, and counterproductive steps to avoid. So it's important to be as much detail here as possible, and straightforward, right? Like explaining everything that they have to do, from beginning of the task until the end. And here's a couple of things, a few things that you would need to consider. Does your description of the task identify the first thing students should do when they begin? Because sometimes it happened to me at least when you think that it should be clear, right? What they should do, the bigger picture. But when you look at the assignment, it's not necessarily clear to them that what they have to do. And sometimes even providing things like read this chapter or like read this excerpt or this article first, right? Before even telling them, you need to analyze and provide this and that. This helps because they will be like, what should I do? Where should I start? That's the question. So this is the important one. The next thing they should do, right? So you read this article, great job. Now you need to do this, right? And the next and the next and so on, until they, the thing they should do until they complete the assignment. So this helps, does it help like students avoiding wasting time on necessary steps and being unproductive with their time expenditures? So these are the kind of things to bear in mind when you're describing the task, right? And does your description of a task also focus time on producing high quality of work and effort? That intentional thinking that's kind of helps as well. So if you look at this task, again, this is a really short excerpt from the same document. If you go to the email that we sent, the very first link that will take you there, which includes much more comprehensive task description, and it starts on page 3. So we would like you to look at the sample task and let us know if you find it comprehensible, if you see that all the things that we mentioned, does it identify the first thing students should do, the next thing, and so on? Does it include all the steps, and is it clear for someone who like reads the document for the first time? So yeah, it will be helpful if you would go to that link now to see the task in full. And then we'll come back for a couple of reflections and your thoughts on the task. This is like continue. Yeah, this. Because remember how we wanted to provide like the shear there. I think it's better to the age or something. I know it's long, and again, there is no need to read every word of the entire task, right? It's just like for you to kind of have this overview of what the task should look like, or maybe not look like. Just let us know kind of what do you think, if this task is a comprehensible example of what the TIL task should look like.
When we were prepping for this, what really what stood out to me too with the task was we start with the part that we have here that's at the very beginning, where it's like the high level task overview, which itself is still broken down into those first, next, finally, right? So it's
Yes.
giving the big moves that need to happen.
Right.
And then the designer has given underneath of that more specifics about those smaller steps. Now we're seeing it here all on one document, but like I can imagine too, like if this was broken down on a Canvas page into multiple steps, say, that could be really guiding for students to be able to see, okay, here's the big picture overview, and making sure that it's organized in a way that critical information isn't buried further down or left out, right? So this gives students enough, that starting direction. And then those more explicit tasks, steps that you're seeing when you look at the full document is giving more step-by-step parts. So if you were chunking that down into smaller in-class activities, this gives the big picture roadmap, and then the smaller are maybe giving the daily tasks, or again, if it was broken down onto a Canvas assignment, those other parts might be smaller, like sort of scaffolded parts or assignments that are worked into it.
And you see that the last sentence there says the follows are the tasks required to successfully complete the assignment. So, and then you see the 2 more pages of the explanation of each and every step, which I thought was really helpful. And students are also really thankful for these explanations as well. And kind of saves you time on explaining things for each student and what exactly and in what order they're supposed to do. Any comments or questions on the task? What it should look like? All right, well, we're moving on then. Criteria. We will delve into criteria and rubrics on Wednesday morning. So please welcome to our next session. But here's just kind of an overview of what criteria is. The criteria are clarifying the how of success, right? What works, what good work is supposed to look like for the student learners. And here are a few things to consider. What specific qualities or components will be assessed in this specific assignment? Are there models or examples of successful work you can share? Again, I cannot stress it enough how great it is when you provide them an example. Less emails, less stress for you, and much more like explicit kind of explanations to them. Are you using a rubric, and what key performance indicators should be included? To be honest, I was never a good friend with rubric until I started to track position and I realized how important it is to have the rubric. And now I have rubrics everywhere, even if it's like in class, ungraded sort of experience. I will still have a rubric so they know exactly what am I looking for, right? How will students know they met expectations before submitting the assignment? Because they all like want to know exactly that they hit that marks, right? Especially those perfectionists, the overperformers, the star students, right? They are looking for these. Like they could be specifically asking, how would I, get an A, right? So these are the criteria. And what level of depth, analysis, or creativity do you expect on each and every step, or in the overall assignment as well? So this would be the criteria that would be included. Here's some framework template if you would like to scan the QR code. If you want to apply to your own assignment, and here's to kind of try it out. You also have the link. I believe it will be the second link from on the list of the links provided in the message that was sent out earlier. You can also have that link directly connecting you to the Google shared folders. So here's a time for you to kind of again work at the table with your partners. And we can ask volunteers maybe to, share their experience of how did they start doing their redesigning their own assignments. So try it out either by scanning the code or clicking the link that we sent you earlier.
Yeah, and time-wise, we're probably not going to have a lot of time to really get started on this today.
Right.
But for folks who are coming back in tomorrow, bring this, we're going to work with the same template.
Yeah.
And we'll have some, we'll have some starting on there, as well as the focus on the assessment criteria. But what we might think about here in the next couple of minutes would be what might be a good starting assignment where you would like to do this? What would be one where maybe there's that need for more transparency or clarity with students? Or, maybe it's the one that you've already chosen to be, this is going to be my assessment instrument, right? And then going back to that again and doing this tilt pass on it, right? Is this something that needs more transparency, that needs more clarity of the purpose, task, and assessment to make that clear for our students?
Again, we're not expecting you to complete anything today. It's more like just to kind of look at what you can do, how you can do this, and maybe picking the assignment, just like Dom said. Okay. Second, without asking volunteers. All right, so this is another QR code, and again, the following link that was sent previously would provide you with a helpful checklist when you will be working on your own assignments, applying TILT to your own assignments. So please make sure to either scan the code or assess it through the messages. This is really helpful. So hopefully it will be a great resource for you. And last but not the least, this is the TILT Higher Ed website, where you can also find many resources. And you can this is the actual address provided there, tilthighered.com, where you can just go and find more useful tools for your redesigning your assignment. Okay. All right, well, we would like to thank you so much for being here today, and we would like to open the floor for questions.
Just, we're low on the minutes here, but and for these links too, again, going back to the email as well that was sent to you, I think these are all, the intention is these are all tools for you individually to be using, but also to be sharing with other colleagues as well. So this TILT framework, and Star and Allison had worked hard on putting this together, and input from us and some other folks on here. So we're hoping this will be really helpful for people regardless of what discipline you're in, right? This is sort of a system agnostic approach, right? With lots of reminders about here are some of the key components that you can be putting in to any assignment. And then this other one with the checklist. This is this from U of L, I think, or from where from some previous work that was done on TILT. And so this is another good way to sort of check afterwards, almost like a rubric, to an assessment rubric to apply to your own TILT process to see, am I hitting these things? So this can help with just answering that question of, is this a better version? Is this a more transparent version to be using?
Yeah, thank you, Dom. Absolutely. This is again, yes, this is a great resource to share. Like for instance, the checklist is just a one-page checklist, so it's kind of nice to just print it out and put it on your desk. Like I have that little desk where I pin things in. So this is the one of them, and obviously sharing with widely with your colleagues at your department, that would be really great. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Well, and as we've been mentioning all along, we do have the second in this series is tomorrow morning at 8:30, or you can be watching afterwards on the recorded video. But we hope that that you and some other folks will be coming in here live as well to participate in this. So we'll do for the folks who will be just coming in, we'll do a quick recap of some of the tilt principles again. And then we'll be going back to that template that we shared and spending more time on doing that as a more hands-on, giving you time to be working with doing the redesign, and with special attention on adding clarity to the rubrics, right? For how's it being assessed. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.